I am so excited to be here, and PC, thank you for that introduction. I'm going to talk to you today about my favorite Bible character besides Jesus. Everybody knows that the right answer is always Jesus, right? But right below him, to me, is King David. But today we're going to talk about King David before he became king. There's so many lessons in his life for us. I can't do the whole life and do it justice. So what we're going to do is we're going to center in on that time before he became king and the things that we can learn from that. But to tell you a little bit, just to give you a little bit of background, in case you're not that familiar with it, David was the most beloved king in Israel. He defeated Israel's worst enemy, the Philistines. He expanded Israel's borders at a time that was really critical for that nation. They hadn't really become a true nation yet. They were still struggling to make their place among their enemies. And he pretty much solidified that. And he got his own miniseries on Prime Video. I mean, hey. Now, I say that as a joke, but you got to understand something. In this culture, for a Bible character to break through mainstream media and become a hit, there's only one other Bible character, and who was that? Jesus. There's only one other guy in the last decade that's made that kind of a hit. And so, even now, he's making an impact on our generation. He also established Jerusalem as Israel's capital, which they had been wandering around a little bit before that. They were still very tribal at the very beginning of their kingdom. And then God promised, this is probably the greatest honor that he ever got, is that God promised him that the Messiah was going to come through his family line. Now, that's big. But his story also includes a crucial message for us and our growth as Christians. See, the question that we all have to face as we go through this life is, how does a shepherd become a king? Now, to answer that, you've got to look at how Israel looked at shepherds. Kings, everybody knows, they were at the top of the heap. Shepherds, not so much. They were near the bottom of the social ladder in Israel. They weren't at the bottom, but they could see it. Their job required isolation because they were taking the sheep up into the hills and the mountains during most of the year, during the growing seasons and stuff, so they could get grazing and they could get water. You couldn't do this job from home. It wasn't a 9-to-5 job. And so they would be gone from any family that they had for months at a time. There was danger from natural and human predators. So even if you could guard your sheep from lions and tigers and bears, oh my, you still had robbers and bandits to deal with. You had people that would come up there while you're isolated, all on your own, and they would either run off the shepherds or kill them and then take the sheep. And to make a bad matter worse, the sheep they were guarding weren't their own sheep most of the time. You had a few guys who had like thousands of sheep, but he would hire these shepherds to go break them up into smaller flocks and take them up into the hills. So these guys were risking life and limb, having to provide their own food, their own shelter, and take care of the sheep, all on their own. There wasn't anybody that was going to come save them if something went wrong. So in a lot of ways, they were living like orphans. And so they were not really highly valued. They weren't like looked down upon, but they definitely weren't somebody that you were going to invite if you were going for the social climbers list. And in the same way, sheep were pretty much at the bottom of the food chain. Now, I'm going to let you in on a secret because I've worked on a farm. And if you have ever seen a sheep in the wild that is not on a petting zoo where they're all washed and fluffy and all that other stuff, you'll figure out something really quick. Sheep smell. And if you've been around them for more than a couple hours, you're going to smell too. And that's probably another reason that the shepherds were having a hard time on that social ladder. Besides that, they were also one of the dumbest and most helpless animals on the earth. And if you don't believe me on that, I've got a clip that these guys are going to show you. Okay, right here, you can see he's stuck in a ditch. The guy's pulling him out. He's out. He's running. He's free. Nope. Okay, how many of you guys can relate to that? Yep. The rest of you guys are lying. I know. And the sad thing about it is that's biblical. God calls us sheep. Jesus called himself the good shepherd. Isaiah 53 says, all we like sheep have gone astray. So why would he call us sheep? I mean, that's not a very flattering allegory. But at the same time, you got to understand, that's showing us just how far we are from being able to control our own destiny. And it's also showing us how much we need to lean in to him. So in a sense, David's story for us is a twofold story. On one hand, he was a shepherd. On the other hand, he was one of God's sheep. And like David, God has a plan for us. Also like David, we're in no shape to execute his plan. Finally, like David, we need to mature. We need to grow up and become the priests and kings that God has anointed us to be. So this is going to be my main focus for today, is that to get from where we are to where God wants us to go, there's going to be battles to fight and obstacles to overcome. The purpose of those battles is to get us prepared for what God plans for us to do. So let's go back to that first point. God has a plan or a purpose in your life. Now, with David, that was no big deal. Back in those days, his calling was really easy. So we're really not going to talk about him that much right here, because all he did was he had a little wiry guy with white hair that came up and poured oil all over his hair and his clothes and messed him up and said, you're going to be the next king of Israel. Then he got back on his donkey and he went to Ramah. So whether it was with pomp and circumstance or anything else, there were no angels, I don't think, that made themselves visible at the moment. But David's calling was clear to him from a very early age. In fact, when that happened, a lot of theologians think he was about 13 years old. That is not old when you find out you're going to be the next president of the United States. But let's set him off to the side for a second. Let's talk about us. That's what we love to do anyway, right? So what's your purpose? And how do you find out? Now, we have been blessed here because my next statement is God speaks to us. And God has divinely ordered our speaking platform in such a way that just last week, Representative Mitch Little got up here and he was talking about how God speaks to us. So I'm going to give you 4 little highlights. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth about it because he's already done that. And I would encourage you, if you have not heard it, go on our website and look. It is an amazing message. And if you have heard it, you might want to just do it again, because I picked up some things the second time that I missed on the first one. But the 4 things basically that he taught, that if you want to hear from God, you want to be in his presence. You also want to be around other mature Christians who can verify and confirm what you think you heard. And if you're not hearing, don't forget to ask God to speak, because a lot of times we have not because we ask not. And then the last thing is be ready to act on what you hear. He mentioned the Hebrew word Shema, which means listen and obey, all in the same word. So your next action after you hear from God is going to be really important, because that's going to help you create your testimony. But watch out. I got warning labels all over this, because if you find out that the God of the universe will talk back to you when you pray, that's going to be more addictive than Instagram and TikTok thrown together. You're going to be praying on your way to work. You're going to be praying in the car on the way home. You're going to be praying in the shower. Before long, if you're not careful, you're going to pray without ceasing.
Come on, Meredith. Let's go.
All right, so that takes us to point 2. Now, before I get to point 2, I want to say something really quick. God does not create hardships in our life. I want to be clear about that. If you trip over something and fall down on your way out of here today, God didn't put that thing in front of you. He doesn't create the hardships that we experience, but he does use them. And sometimes he uses them so well that it looks like it was all part of his plan. But the truth of the matter is, he's not sitting there with a BB gun trying to shoot us off our horse and see what we're going to do after he's already given us the command to go. That just doesn't happen. But let's get back to David. Let's take him back off the shelf, because even though he had an easy time figuring out what his calling was, he had a hard time trying to get there. David had an uphill battle, and it started with his own family. They didn't believe in him. They didn't care for him, and they didn't treat him as an equal. And I've got hard, fast proof of that. When they got word that the prophet of Israel was getting ready to come to their little Bethlehem town, and they wanted to go to Jesse's house, well, Jesse had 7 sons ready to meet him. Problem is, Jesse had 8 kids. Guess who got left out? David, why don't you take the sheep and just go on out there and run around for a little while? Everything's going to be okay. Now, this is as if Billy Graham, I know he's dead. I know a lot of people my age are forgetting who's alive and who's dead. But pretend he's still alive, and somebody told you, hey, Billy Graham's going to come to your house today. Well, now I'd want everybody, all of my family and all of my friends that could fit in the house, I'd want all of them to be there. And that's basically what happened when Samuel came. Not only that, Samuel came to make a sacrifice, and when he came with a heifer. Now, there's a difference between if you're going to sacrifice some turtle doves or if you're going to sacrifice a lamb or a ram or something like that, and all of a sudden you get into the beef family. You're talking about something significant. Nobody knew exactly what he was going to be doing because he'd been keeping it secret. He'd already talked to God, and he said, God, if I go anoint this guy king, Saul's going to kill me. He said, just tell him you're going to have a sacrifice. And so that's what he was doing. So Samuel shows up on his doorstep, and he sees 7 sons, and he goes, nope, none of these guys. Do you have any other kids? Jesse's kind of looking down, like, yeah, I got another one. He's out tending the sheep. And I know what's going through Jesse's head. He's going, man, if those guys didn't measure up, what's this guy going to do when he sees David? But guess what Samuel says? He says, we're not going to sit down until I see that son. Now, this is awkward because they didn't have cell phones back in those days, and the sheep didn't have GPS on them. They had to go find him first. I don't know how long they were all standing around. But when he finally comes in, Samuel goes straight over to him, pours oil on him, says, you're going to be the next king of Israel. He anoints a 13 to 14-year-old boy king. And then I'm sure at this point, he told everybody, this has to be kept under wraps because Saul will do everything he can to kill him and his family. And so they couldn't talk about it. Have you ever told a 13-year-old, hey, I've got a secret? You're going to rule the world, but don't tell anybody. Not going to happen. Anyway, we jump forward. And everybody knows the story of Goliath, right? Well, I can tell you when he got up to that place to give the food to his brothers and their commander, and he sees a giant taunting the Israelite army. And the Israelite army is just standing there taking it. And he looks over here, and there's the king's tent. The king is right here. He's seeing all of it. And he's wringing his hands because there's not a champion for him that's going to go out there and slay the giant. So guess what's going through this maybe 15-year-old's mind at this point? This is my moment. I'm getting ready to make leaps and strides. I'm going to go from being a shepherd that's out there behind my dad's house. I'm going to kill the giant. I'm going to marry the daughter. I'm going to be living in the palace. This is it. This is my moment. And pretty much that's kind of how it played out. He picked up a 50 caliber river rock and he threw it at the giant. Next thing he knows, he's a hero. What can go wrong? Did I mention there's a kind of a crazy king who's really jealous of the attention of his people? And all of a sudden, David's getting these accolades that are greater than him. And like I said, he's a little crazy. All of a sudden, oh, and the last thing, he's got spears. So David starts playing the harp to try to calm him down and dodging spears as they're being thrown at him. Sooner or later, he realizes, I got to get out of here. And he has to leave the palace. Now, there's more to this story than what I'm going over because I don't want to keep you guys till tomorrow. But basically, he ends up out in the wilderness running for his life from the king. And he gathers around him some other social misfits and miscreants that are out there they're homeless people, they're potentially thieves and stuff like that have not done well. They're the Israel that Israel didn't want. And so in a way, I wonder if David didn't think at one point, is this what he meant by being king of Israel? That I've got these thieves and vagabonds here with me. And so he starts to do what my Bible called, he became their commander. He had enough military experience by the time he had to run away that he knew a little bit about that. So they're trying to put themselves together and teach themselves how to fight. And word comes to them that there's a town called Keilah that's been attacked by the Philistines, and that they're taking all of their food, they're taking their animals, they're going to leave them basically destitute. And so the Lord tells David, let's go take your men and go free that city. So he does. He becomes the hero to these people at Keilah. But while they're celebrating, he gets word that Saul may be mustering an army to come down there and get him. And so David drops to his knees and he's going, God, would he really come down here to kill me after I've just freed a city from the Philistines? And God said, yep. No doubt about it. He's on his way. And he said, well, will the people of Keilah give me up even though I just freed them from the Philistines? Oh, yeah. Because he's their king. And so David ran back out to the wilderness. He got out of there before Saul could get him at Keilah. But it sent him a message. I really wasn't welcome in my own family. The king hates me. Even my fellow Israelites, when I save them, are not willing to come to my aid. I'm not safe in Israel. So the only way I'm going to ever get safe is if I get to a king that's as dangerous as Saul is, and Saul will be afraid to come into that guy's place to nail me. So guess where he goes? He goes to the Philistines, the very people who had been their arch enemy, and he had killed a lot of them. So that took a lot of guts for him to do what he did. But he negotiated with them. They were already aware because Saul had been doing things like mustering up to 3,000 men to try to capture David. And I guarantee you, anytime you get an army that big inside of one of those countries, the other countries around them are going to know what's going on and they're going to pay attention. So they were aware. At least I believe they were aware. And so King Achish of Gath actually let him stay there. In fact, they gave him control of a little town called Ziklag. So he was kind of like the town sheriff. And he and his men moved into Ziklag, and they had a great deal because what they were doing is at night they were raiding the Amalekites and the Girgashites and some of the other enemies of Israel. And they were getting their cattle and their grain and all that other stuff. And then they would bring it back to the king of the Philistines, and they said, hey, we raided some of the Israeli outposts in the Negev, and here's what we got. So the Philistines think that he's raiding Israel. He's keeping the border safe for Israel, and everybody's happy. Until one day the Philistines suddenly decide it's time for all of the kings to gather their armies together and attack Israel as one big army. And as soon as all those kings come and they start to gather together, they see David. Guess what their reaction was? Whoa, what are you doing? No. Do you know who you've got with you? And Achish says, he's been with me for 4 years. He's great. I trust him. You can trust him all you want. Do you realize that this guy right here with you has killed more of us than the guy we're getting ready to go attack? So they sent him home. They said, we are not going to fight with that guy. And so David and his men are a little relieved, I'm sure, because they weren't going to have to be facing off against the Israelites, which meant they probably were going to end up having to turn against the Philistines in that battle. And who knows what the result would have been. But relief turns to agony pretty quick. Because as they're approaching Ziklag, they see this column of smoke. And the Amalekites had completely obliterated Ziklag. They had taken the women, the children, the animals, anything of value, and they had burned everything else to the ground. And when Ziklag fell, so did the hearts of his men. He had taken these guys from owning nothing, having nothing. He gave them a dream. He gave them the idea that they could actually have a normal life. And what ends up happening is these guys are so upset that it takes us to 1 Samuel 36. Now, David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved. Another word for that is bitter. Every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in his God. Now, I got to know, what does that mean? I need some of that. If I could bottle that, we'd be in great shape. If every time something happened bad to us, threatening, and we knew how to strengthen ourselves in the Lord, we'd get through a whole lot more battles. So I can tell you first off what he didn't do. What he didn't do was get distracted by the moment. He took his eyes off his men and he turned them towards God. He didn't strengthen himself in himself. He didn't strengthen himself in his army. He strengthened himself in God. And this is partially because that's all he had left. Even his men were deserting him at this point and talking about killing him. He had nothing left but God. But that's always enough. So let me ask you a question, and I'm asking myself at the same time. When trouble comes, do you focus on the problem or do you focus on the solution? Now, whatever we focus on is what we put our faith in. So, how do you move your focus from the problem to God? That's a big question. Because 90% of us, and I'm just wanting to clarify this for everybody in the room, in this world, if we're Christians and we're focusing on the problem, we're voting for the bad guy. We're saying whatever he's got coming, God can't protect me from that. God's not big enough. God's not strong enough. And so it's important that we realize what side of the brick we're falling on right now. But then the other thing is, how do you move your focus from the problem to God? And that's where we go to 1 Timothy 1:18. Paul had sent Timothy to Ephesus. The church was one of Paul's plants, but it was having problems at that point. They had some false teaching that was going on, and they had some other issues within the church that they needed to straighten out. And Timothy is the one he chose to send. But Timothy was younger than the people who were having the fight in the church. So you send in about a 20-year-old or 25-year-old kid to take care of some issues between 50-year-old men. And he told him, he said, "This charge I commit to you, son Timothy, according to the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you may wage the good warfare." Now, what he was telling Timothy at this point is it's going to be rough. You're going to get a lot of opposition in that place, and you're going to probably second guess yourself at some point and start to believe their lies that you're too young to be telling them what to do. But near the end of 1 Timothy, he even writes, "Let not them despise you for your youth." So he even isolates the problem for Timothy, tells him, this is what's going to happen. This is how you fight it. You remember the things that have been spoken over you by your grandmother, your mother, and me. Paul, an apostle of the Lord. So this is what David did. He remembered his testimonies. He remembered the testimonies of his life. He remembered that he was anointed king by not just anybody, but the prophet of Israel. Everybody knew who Samuel was. God helped him kill a giant. God saved him from Saul a lot of times. So the king of Israel couldn't kill him. Couldn't even find him most of the time. God had provided him a private army, which was a little problematic right now because they wanted to kill him. But he still had a private army. That's more than I've ever had. And God had used the Philistines, their arch enemy, to, for 4 years, shelter Israel's most valuable asset against their king. So David gathered momentum from his testimonies. He gathered strength from those. He regained his perspective. He wasn't forsaken. He wasn't abandoned, and he wasn't lost. God was still with him. And he wouldn't have gotten him through all of those things to just let him get killed by a bunch of rocks. Each experience and battle and hardship that he had had, even the one he was going through right then, was meant to prepare him for his destiny. And when David strengthened himself in the Lord, he opened the door for more testimonies by stepping into God's will in that moment. He didn't run away. So he asked the Lord what to do. Shall I pursue these guys? And God said, by all means, pursue, and you will surely overtake them without fail and recover all. He told the men to drop their rocks. Let's go get our stuff. He said, let's quit tearing each other up. Let's go get our women and children. And in doing so, he did something that shocked everybody in that group. They were coming at him with a fist. And he came at them with open hands. He didn't react to the moment. He rose above it. And he offered these guys something that they didn't even know they were asking for. He gave them hope. He gave them a plan. He gave them courage to see that they weren't lost yet either. One defeat wasn't going to define them. They were going to be just fine if they just listened to him. And so what happens? They go after the Amalekites. They destroy the Amalekites. They bring back everything that they had lost at Ziklag and some more stuff that the Amalekites had taken from other towns. He retained his leadership over these guys. And he had another testimony in his quiver. So what does this mean for us? Oh, by the way, let me add you just one more thing. Whoops. It just went away. There we go. If you turn your page in the Bible from that one part, the very next thing that happens is that Saul dies in battle and David becomes king. Just when he thought he was at his lowest place, just when he thought he had his darkest moment, he became king of Judah. So, what does that mean to us? Our testimonies help strengthen us in the Lord. James 1, 2 through 4 says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now, I used to hate that verse as a kid. It's not a very pretty verse. But you know what? Another way of saying that is those trials are going to become your testimony. Those trials are going to become the things that strengthen you, that you'll fall back on. And you'll say, I went through this, I went through that, I went through this. I can handle what's coming. If I'm with God. It's not me, it's God that's doing this. But that's how we grow strong. So God's blessings don't crush us. The weightier the plan that he's got in your life, the stronger your foundation has to be able to deal with it. Could you imagine a 15-year-old King David? it would have been a much different Israel. So we've got to keep perspective. We got to remember who we are in God and who God is in us. We got to know that God has a purpose in everything. And we got to know that the strength is in the battle and not before the battle. We are not going to feel ready when we go in. The Israelites didn't feel ready, but God told them to start marching to the Red Sea before he parted it. He told them the same thing at the Jordan. They started taking the ark right into the water, and then the water started backing away from them. But they had to move first. Psalms 23 says, the Lord prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It's not, he gave me a pancake breakfast beforehand so I'd have plenty of energy. It's like, no, it's right smack in the middle of the battle. It's like going to the gym, even though I haven't been in 2 years. But you don't get strong before you lift the weights. You have to do the work, and that makes you strong. We can't wait till it feels right if God is prompting us to go, because delayed obedience is disobedience. And overcoming those obstacles is what gives us our testimony. We build our stories as we go through our life. Each experience provides a new foundation for the battles that are yet to come. And I hate to end on a down note, but I got to tell you, there will always be more battles. Until the day we leave this earth, there will be battles. But they're not to be afraid of, because they're making us stronger everywhere we go. So, my question to you today is, where are you on this continuum? Are you more shepherd or are you more king? And I want you to do me a favor, and it's everybody just bow your head for a second. And I'd like you to raise your hand if any of these things is true about you. Are you having problems hearing from God? Do you struggle and wonder, is he really speaking to me, or is this just me saying what I want to hear? Are you struggling with your calling? I think I know what he wants me to do, but I really don't want to do it. Or I think I know what he wants me to do, but I'm trying and it's not working. Did you think that you understood God's plan for your life, but now it seems like it's a lifetime away? Are all your resources stripped away and you're on your last leg? If you're in any of these places, I would ask you to stand right now so I can pray for you. God, we come to you as your sheep. We thank you for the truth that we can glean from the life of David. And just like sheep, we need you. Help us to hear your voice and recognize it. Show us the way that we would go. Give us the strength we need to carry out your plan in our lives. And thank you that you never leave or forsake us. We humbly submit this to you, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.